Welcome to the Museum and Historical Places Showcase. We will hear from leaders from grassroots organizations Esther Armstrong Sankofa Children's Museum, Dr. Joan Martin Great Blacks in Wax, and Ronald Miles, our JY Chickweb Council.
I'm Wayne Randall, Finance Editor with the National Black Unity News and host of the Finance Hour. I'm here with Esther Armstrong, some know her as Mama Kiki. She's the founder, president, executive director of Sankofa Children's Museum of African Culture. How you doing today, Esther?
Very, very well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm glad to hear it. I'm doing okay. I don't have no complaints. Glad to hear that. It's a pleasure to have you on the Finance Hour. And you're one of the first people I'm interviewing in this showcase for museums and historical places. Which is quite exciting because we want the viewing people, especially the Black communities, to know a lot about what these grassroots organizations have gone through presently up to now and before the pandemic and through the pandemic. So with that said, I'm going to ask you something about what year was it that the museum opened to the public?
The year was 2020 and the month was February the 1st. That's when we opened to the public with great fanfare.
You said to me earlier in a conversation, may have opened in 2020, but you said going back another 3 or 4 years, there was some preparation that took place alluding to the opening.
Right. So I have had a cultural shop in Baltimore since 1994. I guess that was before your time. But and because of that shop, I got to interact with a whole lot of people from the community. Now, in 2015, I felt like I needed to retire because I was tired and I wasn't feeling my best. We tried to sell the store, and by we, I mean my husband and I tried to sell the store, and we were not successful because actually the people who were interested in buying were not able to get funding, so it didn't happen. Out of desperation, maybe, I decided that maybe we'll do a contest and find somebody suitable to take over the store. Well, guess what? It seemed like nobody wanted a free store either. So I said, Lord, you have to open a door for me because I truly feel like I need to rest. Anyway, it so happened that one of my young customers said to me, Mama Kiki, how about we do something for some school children this February, which would have been Black History Month? I said, what do you have in mind? So she said, well, you and your husband are always teaching people who come to your store. And it is true. I used to be a school teacher, and my husband used to be one too. So it is like, don't ask a question if you don't have time to listen to the answer. And we talked about everything that was in the shop. We talked about the situation in Africa as we knew it. All kinds of conversations we had. Anyway, since this young lady brought me that idea to do something for school children, we rented a space across the street from the store and for a week. And we had 2 schools come through during that week with children, of course. And we had set up stations for them. One of my big pet peeves is, hear people talk about Africa as if it's a country. So that was one of the big things. We had a big sign saying Africa is not a country, and we had a map of Africa showing all the countries that were contained in, at the time, I think it was 52 or 53. We had a station for storytelling. We had a station for drawing where they could draw any of the art pieces that we had. We had a station for dress up where they could get into African clothes, and
Mhm.
all the girls wanted to wrap their heads. That was the exciting thing. So, anyway, after the final, well, during the final day, one of the parents said, um, Miss, you started something. You can't just do it for Black History Month. This is something that our children need to know every day of the year. I said, really? I got plans for me, and they do not include
Um,
having teaching students every day of the year. Anyway, that was the genesis of the museum, because after that I got to thinking, and my husband was firmly in my corner. I said, adults know where to get information if they are interested in getting information. We need to get to the children so that they don't grow up saying, wow, I never knew that. They didn't teach us this in school. This is their opportunity to learn about the history and the culture. And not just for African American children, but for all children, because I firmly believe that some of the problems we have with other cultures is because we don't know about each other's cultures. Once you know somebody and know them well, you are likely to treat them with kindness
mhm,
rather than
mhm.
bully them and make
Yeah,
fun of them and that kind of thing. So, this is a museum for everybody, children and adults, actually.
you made a
So,
very.
anyway, I talk too much.
Oh no, no, no. It's your interview. I'm interviewing you, and you're supplying the things that the public and the viewers need to hear. You made a very good assessment. When you don't know about something, that's when people become ignorant about it or they're biased about it. But the more
Hmm.
you know about someone else's ethnicity,
Hmm.
the better it is you understand them, especially
Yes,
where they came from. You know,
yes.
that's true. I mean, if their eyes are slanted or they're darker than you or whatever it might be about them, or whatever
Mhm.
characteristic it might be about them. So it seems like this lady put in motion a brainstorm, and now you had something on your plate to think about. And I would like to say, would you say that's one of the highlights of uh, that you kind of delved into? And from that point, did you guys decide, okay, let's try to do a museum? Is that how it was birthed? That was the inception of it?
That is how the idea was conceived, and then we had to nurse it into being. It took us from 2016 to 2019, actually 2019, to find a suitable location. And we ended up in, if you know Baltimore, in the Park Heights community,
Okay.
where our landlord was sure uh, would be the best place, because it is um, a community that has been neglected for a long time. And now the city, well, at the time, the city.
There's a few things I want to share here because you had some things that you felt pretty good about, and only you can tell me and the viewing people what was going on. Now, this is a better day, a brighter day. What was happening in the museum? When did this take place in conjunction with what you told me with the pandemic?
So we were closed, um, but we did not want to be out of the public eye. We
Mm-hmm.
did not want anybody, well, hardly anybody knew that we existed. But we did not want it to remain that way. We wanted to be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So we did quite a few things virtually, and it wasn't fun for us doing virtual stuff because none of us knew what we were doing. This tech techie stuff is not for everybody.
No, no, no. It's I understand. You're more of a hands-on kind of people.
Yes,
I want the
yes,
people there. We can engage the audience.
yes. So we did manage to put on a few face-to-face events like this one. Now, this is a young girl, um, originally from Ghana, which is my home country,
Mm-hmm.
and she and her family perform traditional African or Ghanaian dances from the Ashanti people. So this was one time that they came to perform for, um, guests we had invited to the museum. This was kind of like, we're still here. Um, can you pay a few dollars and we can show you some cultural things to entertain you? This was still in the pandemic, so um, it was not easy to pull off, but we did. Isn't she beautiful?
Yes, she is, and I'm glad to hear that you use the use of your time, even though certain things were closed, but you got the people in.
Yes,
You got
yes.
the people in, and which was good. Is this part of that same gathering, or what?
This was let me see, in 2023. This was 2021,
Okay.
and we started an event which I'm calling the Children's Festival of African, no, what is it called? Children's African Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a local school called Community of Scholars in
Okay.
the community, and we partner with them. So sometimes when we have events where we need them to showcase what they do, I mean they are an African centered school,
Mm-hmm.
so they learn the facts, and they also perform using African instruments. So they came to perform for us.
I'm glad to hear. See, now you're partnering with somebody.
Yes,
School is not too far away from the center.
yes, yes.
See, that looks like that. Is that the continent of Africa down on the floor there?
That is the continent of Africa down on the floor there. We are trying to build out the continent.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier about how some adults were not aware that Africa is a continent, not a country.
Yeah.
So this is one of the activities that our guests do. Um, and by the way, people they enjoy putting the continent, this puzzle together.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, one parent said to me, because the parents are also engaged, they have to do it unless they're too old to get on the floor.
Yeah.
They have to they have to help the children put it together. And one parent got off the floor one time, and she said to me, "Well, I'm glad I'm doing this because now I know what I don't know."
There
I
you go.
said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, that is the idea.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you are learning right along with the children."
Yeah. It was getting involved to understand the countries that are within the continent.
Continent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I see. Now, this gentleman looks like he has a dashiki on. Is he from another school? Is he a visitor? Or...
This is my husband, and his name is Jim.
Oh, thank you for enlightening me. I did not. Now you know I did not know who he was.
How would you know?
I would not have known that.
How
Is
would
your
you know?
husband Jim?
So,
Everyone, I never knew that.
when Jim retired from his job, his
Yes.
work, um, I invited him to join me because at that time I had a shop and I was basically running it by myself.
Yeah.
So his initial question was, how come you don't have any African art in here? Mostly we had clothing and we had some decorative pieces,
Right.
and we had a lot of jewelry. He says, why, how come you don't have any African art? And I said, it's because I don't know much about African art. But you're an African. How come you don't know? I said, let me tell you a story. It starts with the day the Europeans came to Africa, to West Africa specifically, and decided that all the, well, they were not art. They were not considered art, but all the artifacts that
Mm-hmm.
the natives had made for various reasons and used for different purposes, um, they were told that these were all idol worship.
Oh, okay.
And it was wrong for them to use. Actually, Europeans did not think that Africans had a religion. So they brought Christianity.
Okay.
But in bringing Christianity, they also denigrated what the natives had. And we know what happened to some of the pieces that were said to be evil. They ended up in Europe and European museums.
Okay.
Anyway, because of that history, if you grew up in a Christian home in Ghana, for instance, as I was, you knew nothing about these pieces because they were considered evil. You stayed as far away from them as possible.
Okay.
And I tell the story now of when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and my mother would send me to the market with a list. Take this to Auntie so and so at the market so she can shop for you. I used to have to pass through a small community which had a shrine in the middle of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? I went 1 mile out of my way so I would not pass near the shrine because it had figures, which I did not understand. All I knew was I was afraid of them. Talk about the ignorance.
Yeah.
So that's how I didn't know anything about African art. So
That's,
when Jim joined me,
mm-hmm.
and he asked, I told him the story, and he said, "Well, I'm not, I don't have that background. I can learn about the art, and if I learn about the art, can we carry the art?" I said, "Sure," not expecting him to, do anything with it. Once he started learning about it, he ran away with it. So it got to a point in Baltimore, if anybody wanted to know about an African piece, they called him.
Something positive.
That's
Something positive came out of this.
very, very positive.
Something
Very, very
positive came
positive.
out. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
Oh,
Today he's the curator of the museum, and he still knows more about it than I ever will.
while you all are working together, you're a team.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Here you are in the museum,
Yes.
and let's see what's coming up on here. I guess this is a banner that you see when you come in.
Yes. This is at the front entrance. And
Thank you.
it says first of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
which means there is no other one like it, as far as we know, in the world, definitely in the US. We have
Yes.
searched the internet,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we haven't found a children's museum focused solely on telling the story about Africa and its peoples. Usually, the story we hear is what others tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured it's time we told our own story.
See, I
And
like
that's what
that.
we try to do in the museum.
Tell your own story, tell it in your own words,
Yes.
your own narrative.
Yes.
Thank you for enlightening us and educating us on the things you knew and the things you didn't know, and how your husband helped you
Yes.
and hold this whole together about these artifacts. I mean, because I get it. You went out of your way not to pass this statue, this figure, because
Yes.
you were told it was demonic.
Yes.
I would have done the same thing. Even if I was
Uh-huh.
driving, I'm not going to drive past this thing. I get it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how things are. We go with the information that we have or we don't have,
Right.
or the misconception that's put out there until you find out and learn something different.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to the museum a bit about the children there. The children I saw in the museum, is there a certain age group that you're trying to connect with? What's the range of children, the age range that you have children that participating in the museum, in the activity?
Okay. So I never have a straight, simple answer.
Oh, that's okay.
Ori-
That's okay.
originally, our plan was to um, target third, fourth, and fifth graders.
Mhm.
We figured they were old enough to understand, new concepts, foreign concepts. And they were not too old to start showing off. Um, so that was the age group or age range that we wanted to cater to. Of course, you know, God had other plans. With the pandemic, all of that changed. Schools were closed. So what were we going to do? When we could actually start, crawling a little bit and inviting people to come in, it was parents bringing a child or two or three. It was families coming in.
Mhm.
And sometimes parents wanted to bring in toddlers. And our response was always, they are not going to benefit, you know, much at all in this museum, because even though it's hands-on activities, some of this is not for 2 or 3 year olds.
Oh no.
Anyway, to make a long story short,
Mm-hmm.
we decided to introduce other things that the younger ones could do. So we have a lot of puzzles that they can do. They are not necessarily African um, puzzles, but we have a lot of, we use a lot of animals, so they can create a zoo, for
Mm-hmm.
instance,
Mm-hmm.
or do something interesting. And we find out that the parents really are more enthralled with the African art than the children.
Okay.
it got to it got to they were the ones who understood. They were the ones who asked questions. And the children were fidgeting. So in the end, we decided to introduce something else in the room with the exhibits. We call that the Great Hall. So now the children get to do a scavenger hunt, and for which they get a prize. So they have cards with a picture of um, any artifact or item on it. And in the back of the card, they have we have a description of what the item is.
Mm-hmm.
And each child gets a card, or sometimes if it is a slightly larger group, they can share. You know, they work in pairs, and they go around the space and they find the different artifacts, and everybody crowds around one by one, and we read. So they get to learn to read too. They read what the artifact that they are standing by. Um, they read about it. They read it aloud so everybody can hear and learn about it. And they get a prize. That always gets them
Yeah,
very excited.
an incentive. They get an incentive,
Yes,
an
yes,
incentive
yes.
to do well. I want to mention somebody, I believe you know, a Zeke Stewart. He speaks very highly of you and the work that you're doing there. And he said you were at Diamond, the place out there in Randallstown. There was an event going on out there.
Mhm.
And because, as you know, he said he's going to be going back to the motherland. Is the
Yes.
museum any way involved in helping people transition back to the motherland? Is the museum involved in any of that?
Not directly.
Okay.
Not directly. Now, part of our phase two uh, plan is to get people so engaged in their knowledge
Mm-hmm.
about, all the different ways that they can become part of the African continent, including, we are supposed to be partnering with any number of these organizations that offer genetic testing, so
Mm-hmm.
people can find out uh, where they are from,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps following that they might, want to visit. And that was all part of the plan, to get people to go visit also. So Zik and Kenny, when I met them, had already made up their minds what they wanted to do. So I
Mm-hmm.
was just a conduit. I, you know, gave them information and connected them with people in Ghana that they could talk to in terms of, you know, whatever questions they might have. So I am excited that now they are into the travel business. So
Yes.
we definitely will be working together,
Yes.
because of, all the people that I think would be interested in traveling at some point.
I'm glad you mentioned the word travel because, as you know, and I didn't tell you, or if I did, Zeke is in the first showcase. He's in the sharing that. And I want to say this much to you, all that you told me about Zeke and the museum. What future plans do you see for the museum? What do you want? What do you envision?
Oh my goodness. Big, big visions.
That's good.
um, it is good.
Yeah, that's
What
good.
I am looking to do is pass these ideas on to somebody younger, or some people
Mm-hmm.
younger, who might have ideas that I haven't even dreamt of.
Mm-hmm.
But we are still in phase one of my original plan, and phase two, I am praying. Um, Baltimore has a master plan for the Park Heights district, and one of the plans includes developing the area around the racetrack,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and that's where I want to be, because I want the museum to be a destination in Baltimore. an attraction for people, not just local people, but for people who visit Baltimore, a place to go, where you come out and say, wow, I learned something. I learned so much.
Yes.
And so, some of the ideas that I already shared with you in terms of partnering with companies that offer DNA testing and that kind of thing.
Yes, you did mention
One
that.
of the other exciting ideas I have is when we finally get our own place to open an open kitchen or restaurant where you can go to North, South, East, and West, Central Africa and taste all the foods. So even if you can't travel, or maybe that
Right.
will be the beginning of your travel,
Yeah.
you can go to South Africa and test some of their foods. In actual fact, the museum is planning a Taste of Africa event on the 22nd of July.
Okay.
This will be the first one we have, and we are very, very excited because people always ask me all the time, where is the place to eat African food in
Okay.
Baltimore? Not many, not many. So I want to, that's going to be one of the first things I do when we find a good place for us to move to.
I'm glad to hear that. Now I'm going to say, in closing, is it anything you want to say for the viewing public in this showcase that you didn't already tell me? You've told us a lot.
Yes.
You told us a lot, and I like the vision. But in closing, I'll let you say
So
what.
in closing, I would like to say that um, the museum is for the people. The
Mm-hmm.
museum is to teach. We are filling a need that the schools are not meeting yet.
Yes.
So it is our job to make our children aware of who they are. We want them to have pride in who they are as Black children, not forget all the noise around you and what you see on TV. We want to tell you the truth about your heritage. And it is a story of pride,
Mm-hmm.
how Africa has contributed to the modern society.
Yes.
Even if you talk about America and the slaves who came, how much haven't they done for the country called America? And it's not just in America. We are all over the world and we have made wonderful contributions. So our children should know this and they ought to be proud. So with that, let me just say that we are located at 4330 Pimlico Road in Baltimore, Maryland. Our website, that is how you can create or schedule
Mm-hmm.
a trip to the museum. You have to go to our website, which is sankofakids.org. And there is a lot of information on that website, and including um, scheduling your trip, but also making a donation. We, because we are not able to sustain our work right now,
Mm-hmm.
we need the support of the community. If you think we are doing good work, please support us because we need to grow. We cannot let this die. We
Yes.
need to grow and we need the support of everyone to grow. So please make a donation if you can. No amount is too small, as I like to say. So
Thank you for saying it.
thank you very much.
No, thank you. And you all heard, money is nothing but a tool, but used the right way, you can help many people do many things. Thank you, Esther. AKA Mama Kiki. When you
Yes,
know who
sir.
she is, thank you for being
I,
in this showcase. It's been more than a pleasure. And I'm going to wish you a very nice rest of your day. You be safe.
thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful evening.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Welcome to the Museum and Historical Places Showcase. We will hear from leaders from grassroots organizations Esther Armstrong Sankofa Children's Museum, Dr. Joan Martin Great Blacks in Wax, and Ronald Miles, our JY Chickweb Council.
I'm Wayne Randall, finance editor with the National Black Unity News and host of the Finance Hour. I'm here with Dr. Joanne Martin, president and CEO of the National Blacks in Wax Museum, located in East Baltimore. How you doing today, Dr. Martin?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm glad. I'm happy. I'm grateful to just let you grace me with your presence, and we can share some information about this grassroots organization, and we're going to delve right into it. But before we do that, I want to tell you what an honor it is to have you on the Finance Hour, and more importantly, to have you participate in this museum and historical places showcase, because these will be aired in a much later date. I know the museum is going through a great deal of restoration and things of that nature, but I'm not going to start right there. Just want to talk a little bit about your involvement. So, and when you became CEO of the museum, what were your views or expectations at the time you took the helm?
Well, I guess for me, my history with the museum is from the very beginning because my late husband, Elmer, and I are the founders of the museum.
Okay.
And so it has been an integral part of it is pretty much my life. And it started with 4 wax figures that my husband and Elmer and I purchased with some money that we were saving and make a down payment on a house with some bank loans and commercial credit loans and whatever we could do to purchase those 4 wax figures. And we would take them around Baltimore metropolitan area, set them up as exhibits, and then take them home with us to our 2-bedroom apartment. And they occupied the guest bedroom of our 2-bedroom apartment. So if you looked into that room, you would have found Mary McLeod Bethune's head on the dresser, and Frederick Douglass's torso in a corner, and Nat Turner and John Brown sharing spaces within that room. And we began to, shortly thereafter, Harriet Tubman and Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. And then, so that was until we had gathered 22 wax figures. And then from there, set up a small storefront in downtown Baltimore on Saratoga Street.
Mhm.
That was 1983. Our first iteration was the traveling exhibit with the 4 wax figures that I described to you.
Mhm.
And my husband Elmer billed us with the lofty name, the Martin's Wax Exhibition of Great Afro-Americans, and that was the 4 wax figures, and then the 22, and moving into the storefront in downtown Baltimore.
No, thank you for that whole, just thank you for that synopsis in the background leading up to where you guys are at now. I understand that, and thank you for that. I mean, that was just a wealth of information right there. I did read through a lot of what it said in your bio. I understand that you guys in March, you had a momentous occasion where you guys got a great deal of funding. And I mean, that had to have been, I mean, that must have been a work in progress. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that if you can?
Well, through the efforts of Congressman Kwesi Mfume and um, the the earmark process,
Mhm.
and very much supported in this effort by Senator Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen. We submitted our request to the senators, the earmark request. On the House side, it's called a Community Project Grant.
Okay.
And we submitted it to all three of them, and they decided that given that Nancy Pelosi was head of the House,
Mhm.
that and Kwesi, we're in Congressman Nfume's district, that he would take the lead, and that we had a better chance on the House side than we did it on the Senate side at that time. Because the Senate was a 50-50, and Kamala Harris would have to come in. Vice President Kamala Harris would have to come in and break the tie and so forth. So our chances were better. Plus, Kwesi, Congressman Nfume, knew the museum. He's had a history with us. So we were able to get the 2,000,000 8,000 something, and you're showing the big check on the screen. So that
Yeah.
funding that will allow us to do well, we've have attempted to do for a long, long time.
Mhm.
And it for me is a miracle and a blessing receiving that those funds. But I've been in the trenches for so long, just
Yeah.
fighting for those kinds of things to happen.
Yeah.
Um, we also have the support of Senator Corey McCray of the 45th district. He
I
is
see him there.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and he has fought for us. Um, we have $1 million bond bill that was passed that will be available in July, and last year a $2 million bond bill, all because of Senator McCray. And we've one of the things that he and Antonio Hayes and so forth, that they made happen, was the um, matching requirement that was just killing organizations like the cultural organizations like Great Blacks in Wax and
Mhm.
in a Playhouse and UB Blake, where if we got the funds, just trying to match it was a problem, because we work Black-led organizations, minority organizations.
Mhm.
We work on a shoestring, and so much of what we do comes from uh, doing everything. I mean, my people ask me, "Do you ever sleep?" Because I'm sending emails out at 2 a.m. and so forth,
Yeah.
and for every one of those requests, I wrote it. I am the grant writer in the family, or in the museum family. So, but it requires a lot of sacrifice and effort on our part, and I know you know that.
Yes, yes. I'm just, asking the questions so people, once they see this showcase, they will understand what it means to be in the trenches, what it means to do the lion's share of the work. And this is a love. This is a love affair. This is a passion for what you're doing. And it's doing a lot of things for many people because these are historical figures. You have them out in the forefront. And now the money is going to allow you to go into another location. As I read in your bio, you're interested in doing some type of renovation. What was it, 5 buildings or so, or somewhere at some other
Um,
location?
not in another location. We are in on North Avenue and in our fragile community
Mm-hmm.
separately. My husband Elmer and I fought for that. My husband, his mantra, two things that he truly believed in, and as do I. But community development and cultural development go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that conventional wisdom all over this nation is that you hide your poverty areas. And once you succeed in hiding them, then you can succeed in neglecting them. But
Yeah.
that we were going to create a museum right in the heart of the African American community, in a fragile community to show that that communities matter and museums matter, and that those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. So we made the decision to move to North Avenue, and some of the challenges have come from the idea of we have the busloads of people who come.
I thank you for that because I didn't know that. So these young people are getting training, hands-on training in a monumental establishment like the one that you're in right now, and they get a chance to meet you.
Yeah, I again that whole trench work part. I will the program starts July 10th. I take them on a behind the scenes tour,
Okay.
and I talk to them about what was in. Well, first off, I tell people that when they're walking around in the museum, it's like walking around in the head of Dr. Elmer Martin.
Okay.
And many people, my friends, say that I don't give myself enough credit, and so I'm trying. I can just hear them now saying that the kind of input that has come from me about what these exhibits are and what the programs are and so forth. So I wanted to put that out. It's hard for me to say that, but I know that that's what they're expecting of me. But with these children, I go in and I do the behind the scenes tour. And I do a presentation talking to them about what motivated us. I talk to them about the story of the young boy. Elmer sponsored a little league baseball team of Baltimore City children. He had pictures taken of them so that they could play in the league. And one of the kids, little 8, 9 year old, whatever, came up to him. He was angry, fist, tears welled up in his eyes, and demanded that Elmer make the photographer take the picture over, saying to Elmer, "They got me too black in this picture. I don't want to be as black as they got me in this picture."
Right.
And that was so shocking because, we're the say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud generation. We were the generation who declared that we were black and
Yes.
rejected the notion of being Negro and colored. And so to have this kid saying they got me too black in this picture was just such a shocking thing. And Elmer said that he sat in his office at Morgan, where he was on the staff in the Department of Social Work and Mental Health. And he said he asked himself in between classes, how did we get back to this point? And how did we get back to this point so quickly? Because, we weren't really even out of it was the 80s, but just a breath away from the civil rights movement and from the Black consciousness movement when we were black and proud, saying it loud. And here's this kid saying,
here this comes
they
out.
got me too black in this picture. And so how do we get back to that? And Elmer said he concluded that we failed to institutionalize our history, to build institutions solely designed to preserve our history and culture. And failing that, every generation was going to have to start from scratch.
Start from scratch. That's a good point. That is a good assessment. Your husband figured that out. I read in the bio that it said that the museum has been heralded by the news media around the world, such as CBS, the Early Morning Show, the Daily Record, Associated Press, and the Wall Street Journal. Have you guys ever been compared to this Madame Tussauds Museum in New York? Because you are national too.
We have been. One of the comparisons is that our museum doesn't focus just on celebrity. I mean, sometimes in the Tussauds, they don't even have to put up. We have to put up a sign saying who the figures are and tell something about their bio and deliberately so, because we want you to know something about this person that's standing before you. When we first started out, we deliberately didn't put that many sports and entertainment figures in because we figured that's the history we've been allowed to tell, for those people who figure that they can tell us what history we can tell. And so we wanted the idea that there are no limits to what we can do because there are no limits to what we have done.
Yeah,
And so we
I like
wanted,
that.
yeah, science and inventors. Elmer started gathering in miniature. Well, he did one of the exhibits that we did on Saratoga Street early on was 100 Black inventions. And he
Mhm.
started buying the inventions in miniature and you know, and there was just and he had a case built and he displayed those. And one person came on Saratoga Street. He came to our museum. He looked at that figure, the case with all of those exhibits. He seemed fascinated. He had a pad with him and he was writing things down. And he left out. About an hour and a half later, he came back and he said he needed to apologize to us. And we asked him why. We were our exhibit, our museum on Saratoga Street was just about 5 minutes away from Enoch Pratt Library,
Okay.
and to Enoch Pratt, and asked them if they had any information about Black inventors. And so they pointed him in that direction, and he said he had to apologize because he read that and he said, "Well, you know, if they've got to." You know, lie about our history in order to make people feel proud, then I'll just have to accept that. And he went thinking that he wasn't going to find any information about Black scientists and inventors, and that exhibit that he was looking at was our effort to, you know, do revisionist history so that Black people could feel proud of themselves, even if it meant lying.
Oh.
And he said, I am a college professor.
Mhm.
I stand before students, many of those students Black, and I didn't know anything about this history. And I am following up on this, almost expecting not to find it and being shocked. And you know, so just that starting point of why we have to do
Mm.
what we do, and the need to institutionalize our history and not make it accidental and have people, you know, just discover it accidentally or not believe it when
Oh
they
my.
come upon it.
Yeah, like you said, you weren't embellishing. This was the actual truth. It was astonishing
Exactly,
that
exactly.
that the
And one
gentleman.
of the,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
It was
Uh,
astonishing that he didn't even know himself.
Exactly. And this was supposed to be a learned person. He's teaching our children. And one of the things that we came to understand is that we had to put patent numbers there. It that it wasn't going to satisfy people just that we're saying this is what we did, or that we're giving them the name of the person or whatever. So we started putting the patent information there.
We had to go one step further
Exactly.
to show the authenticity of what you were showing.
Exactly.
And it's something that we always had to go the extra mile. You know, we always have to do that to, as I stated again, you know, show the authenticity of what we're talking about is actually what you
Yes.
see.
Yes.
It's something else. You've made so many accomplishments and so many strides. How long has it been now that your husband has now left you and you're completely at the helm without him? Because I know he's probably with you every day and you're on this journey and you probably could say, oh, I wish I could tell you about what just happened when we received this funding.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. But I just feel that he's still there helping to guide the process.
Yeah.
We jokingly say he's still bossing us around. We were in Egypt and we were on a study trip. He wanted to follow the path of Christianity, Islam,
Mhm.
Judaism,
Mhm.
and he suffered a heart attack,
Oh,
but I made him a promise that I was going to see to it that this museum that meant that he both lived and died for, that I was going to see to it that it survived and thrived, and that I could pass that along to some of the young people
Yes.
whose lives we have helped to shape, and so that's 2001.
It has come to fruition. It came to fruition, and you kept your part, obviously. And in 2001 and 2002, you made several television appearances, CBS show, the Anna Lewis Talk Show, and To Tell the Truth. Can you share a little bit of what those experiences were like?
It it was fascinating that sometimes the way that they found out about us with the Nanda Lewis, her producer, or some person connected with her show, had been to the museum, and they saw, they were featured in a book, and they got their copy of the book.
Okay.
And then they saw that Elmer and I can't even remember the article, but that we were featured in this book. And so they called, and they came and they visited, and they went back. They were then associated with the Ananda Lewis show, and they went back and they told her about it. And she invited us to New York
Okay.
to do her show. And we took the wax figures with us, and set them up for her show. And you mentioned CBS Morning,
Yeah.
and I remember that, you know, because it's kind of fuzzy, because I also remember that we were on Good Morning America with
Yes.
Spencer Christian from he's from Baltimore, I think, but he was in doing a speech for the Urban League or something, and they were going to do the show from Baltimore, and they chose to do it at the museum. So I can remember him being there. I can remember the New York Times wrote early on an article on the museum. So I can remember being on with Bryant Gumbel was the host of,
Yeah.
and
The
I
Today
kept
Show.
hoping the other person on the show, I kept hoping, I hope it'd be Bryant Gumbel who's going to,
Right.
but that didn't happen. But so a lot of things. I was just telling someone yesterday, we had a group from Leadership Maryland who, as a part of their program, visited the museum, and I took them on tour. And I was telling them about Lupita Nyong'o from 12 Years a Slave, and
Okay.
you know, this world famous actress now, has done so much, but she told a friend of hers that she didn't know how to prepare for her role in 12 Years a Slave. She's from Kenya. She does, you know, picking cotton and those kinds of things, and everything that the role called for. That was just so outside of her experience.
Okay.
And so she said that her friend told her, and she was in LA trying to prepare for the role, and her friend told her, you need to get down to Baltimore to that little wax museum, because if you go through there, it will give you everything you need. And she got on a plane, flew to Baltimore, visited our museum, and she said when she went through the doors, the first thing she saw was a 500-pound bale of cotton. That was central to her role in 12 Years a Slave, because she was praised for being able to pick 500 pounds of cotton.
Oh my.
And so she said that when she looked at, she said, so this is what 500 pounds of cotton looks like. And then in the article, she proceeded to take the reader through our museum. She took them on a verbal tour of our museum in that article.
Yeah, what she physically or visually saw. That was great.
Okay.
I mean, and then she did well in the role.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
so,
And,
you know,
yes,
the flight, the experience, all of it paid off.
that's true. And you know, just the idea. I mean, it's such a sense of pride for me, because you know, our exhibits have not changed dramatically in the time that we moved onto North Avenue and in the firehouse it's called, but our building on North Avenue,
Mhm.
and that my husband Elmer created something timeless
Yes,
there.
it is timeless.
And you know, and that she could come in and see that bale of cotton and connect to it. But that's something that we put in the museum in the early 90s. I talk about the slave ship exhibit. We had an exhibit, and it was, I mean, we had a scene that you looked into, and
Mhm.
it was very dramatic and powerful, of the Middle Passage.
Mhm.
And even though Elmer, it came out of his, you know, his design a genius, he complained about it all the time,
Oh,
that it wasn't what he was looking for it to be. And we didn't understand, because we thought that we were just very, the staff and I were just very pleased, the board members, everybody very pleased. um and he finally got me to understand that he didn't want you looking into the scene as an observer.
mhm.
He wanted the experience, you to be not an observer of the experience, but a participant in it. And so our slave ship, where you go physically down into it,
Okay.
into the belly of it,
Oh my.
that you walk into the hold of the slave ship, where you see the men's quarters and the women's quarters and the boys' quarters and the crowdedness and the loose packing and tight packing and all of those things. You see the effort to um, starve our people, to
Oh,
punish them. You
yeah.
see the resistance. You see black men rebelling against that,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
the
Yeah.
ways in which, if we we would take look for a weakness in the captain and the crew and take over the ship. So it wasn't just the Amistad, but any effort that we got to fight against that. You get all of a sense of that. And another thing that Elmer did was to put a big mirror across the one side, so that as you look into the mirror, you're looking at all of that going on behind you, of the
Mhm.
crowdedness and the misery and so forth, but you're also looking at yourself. You are a participant, not an observer.
Yes. I mean, and you know, just what you said and how you painted the picture of the illustration of people being taken from out of the diaspora to come here in these slave ships, in shackles, in these tight quarters, in everything else we know that you have to deal with and have to, everything, you know, from the course of the day under this thing, and it's hot, you're tired on the top of each other. Terrible. And like you said, your husband, he wanted you to envision how this would be to be in this situation, not as
Exactly.
a spectator. And I mean, just thinking about it was just inhumane, you know, inhumane that people had to live through that. And many probably didn't live through it, didn't make it at all.
Exactly. And you know that you could be shackled to someone who had died, and there
Yeah.
you were, um, on the long march to the sea, where the animals would come up to feed on you, and within the slave ship itself, where you dealing with the rats and the vermin and
Oh
all of
my.
that, where you're shackled to someone who is dead. And you know, I mean, we have a floor that it's not blood filled, and you know, so there's only so much of that we can capture. But Elmer also wanted, so in our slave ship, you hear the sounds, you hear the moans.
Yeah.
We actually provide that, and coming out of the slave ship, you hear
Remember. Okay.
the whispering of that. So all of that is a part of the experience, is what he really wanted, where you were a participant and not an observer.
Oh, thank you for just telling me all about that, and all the viewing people are going to see this. Going forward, what is the vision right now, Dr. Martin, with what you want to do with the restoration? What do you foresee happening, let's say, in the next couple of years. I heard that the renovation would be going on probably about that much time or so.
The Great Blacks in Wax Museum is an impressive site. Located in East Baltimore, the museum is dedicated to showcasing the contributions of African Americans to American history and culture.
The centerpiece of the museum is a massive exhibit dedicated to the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, Jr., Rosa Parks, and John Lewis were three key figures in the civil rights movement.
Recently, National Blacks in Wax Museum received a federal grant for $2 million for renovations. Significant members of Congress were there to present the award to Dr. Joanne Martin, President and CEO. Over the next 2 years, renovations will be made so an additional 35,000 square feet will be added to the museum. People are still visiting the museum while the expansion is in progress.
Right. There are five row houses and the firehouse. And so what we would be doing, just based on what we're required to do with Maryland Historic Trust, is to preserve the front facades of 3 of those buildings. And then, but to demolish everything that's attached to them and create a continuous museum that would go from the firehouse at 1601 to the 1611 building. And the dream has always been a block long. So we're still working on that, but doing it in phases. So the first phase would be 1601 to 1611, a continuous a museum that would be about 35,000 square feet. And to begin the story, not of the 5,000 years of history that we tell now, but 250,000 years of history, showing that connection of Africa as the birthplace of humankind.
Right.
Showing that connection. I know that in today's climate, people don't want to hear that, but all of us connected to that African man and African woman, whose blood is in all of us as humankind. So being able to tell that story and looking at the kingdoms and empires of Africa and all of that and our being snatched out of Africa to come and build the rest of the world. That story.
Thank you for sharing that. And in closing, what else would you want to say, to share, or impart with me and anybody else that's going to see this showcase? You've just given up a wealth of information. I'm just sitting here just relishing it myself.
Well, I want people to know that if you visited before, there's still a reason to visit. As you look at the ways in which there is an effort to write us out of the history books, to pretend that we or to ban the books of our brilliant writers and our stories and our narratives, that there's every reason for you to come back so that you can pass on to your children what this history is. That we were a powerful people who made any number of accomplishments, and that we need to pass that along, but also to help our children understand their obligation to pass it along. And for me, whoever those children might be, because that you don't have to be, your ancestors don't have to be from Africa for you to realize that this is the history of this nation. And if you live in this nation, you should make sure that you include the Native Americans and the African Americans and all the people who have contributed to the making and shaping of this world.
I like that, because we have a lot to do with what everybody sees, the infrastructure, everything, all of it. We've been part of. We may not have gotten the credit for it, but this nation was built off the backs of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. I'm here with Dr. Joanne Martin, CEO and President of the National Black and Wax Museum in East Baltimore. What a pleasure it's been to sit here and chat with you and go through this information, and you enlighten me on many many points of different things and just sharing some of the highlights and especially the envision your husband had. He was a visionary.
Yes.
And to see you're still doing your part as a faithful wife and to see it come to fruition. I just can't wait to see where the renovation is going, and completion would be, let's say, maybe another couple of years, maybe.
Yes, we're looking at 2 years.
Okay, so let's say maybe 2025, somewhere along the way, something like that.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Martin, I'm going to leave you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the Finance Hour and sitting here and talking to me. And
Well, I appreciate the invitation. It's an honor.
oh
Thank you.
yeah, you know, we didn't make it the other week, but you were valuable enough for me to wait. So
Well,
wait.
thank you.
Sometimes in most things in life, you have to wait for, you know. I know we live in a microwave world where people want things to happen in a split second, but
Exactly.
you know, that's not a problem. It all came together, and I'm very grateful for it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You enjoy the rest of your evening, okay? I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Oh, I look forward as well. Just
Yes.
anytime, just let me know.
Thank you. I'll be calling.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome to the Museum and Historical Places Showcase. We will hear from leaders from grassroots organizations Esther Armstrong Sankofa Children's Museum, Dr. Joan Martin Great Blacks in Wax, and Ronald Miles, our JY Chickweb Council.
I'm Wayne Randall, Finance Editor with the National Black Unity News and host of the Finance Hour. I'm here with Ronald Mills, President and CEO of RJY Chickweb Council, Inc. How you doing today, Mr. Miles?
I am doing exceptionally well, sir. I wake up every day. I know I have something to do, and I try to, and I accomplish those things.
I like to hear that. That sounds like something that I do. When I wake up, I'm just grateful to be up. Thank you, sir, for that. What a pleasure it is to have you on the Finance Hour and be an integral part of this museum and historical places showcase. You know, you've been very animate with your quest to bring the Chickweb dream to life. And what I've read, you've been doing your due diligence to no avail. And for some time, you haven't been able to yield the results that you and the council deserve. And in our earlier discussion a few days ago, we talked about hitting those hot topics. So that's what we're going to do. So with no further ado, we're going to get right into those hot topics. Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on Chickweb's dying wish?
Yes, here in Baltimore,
Mhm.
very, very segregated. We had no public facilities for Black youth in Baltimore.
Mhm.
And Chick Webb, being a native Baltimorean, became very famous in New York.
Mhm.
You know, he was the, I would call it drummer king at the Savoy.
Mhm.
And he was also one responsible for for Ella Fitzgerald. But anyway, knowing his community here in Baltimore being segregated, we had no outlet for Black youth. So
Mhm.
on Chick Webb's deathbed, he was being helped by Dr. Ralph Jonathan Young. And he has said to his doctor that he always wanted to contribute and give something to the Black community of Baltimore. And what he said to the doctor, he said to call his friend Joe Lewis, that he would fill any house.
Mhm.
And that is what Dr. Young did. He called Joe Lewis, and for the first fundraiser to build the recreation facility,
Mhm.
Dr. Young convened members of the Rhythm Club in New York. They included people as Ella Fitzgerald, Jackie Moss Mabley, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, the Ink Spots, as well as the Nicholas Brothers. And there were so many other entertainers.
Mhm.
And they came to Baltimore and did a fundraiser at the 5th Regiment Armory, whereas 7,500 people showed up for that particular um, kickoff benefit for the Chick Web Rec Center.
Yeah.
And that's what occurred. But actually, it took, and again, the Black community here in Baltimore actually appealed to both the city of Baltimore and the YMCA, who both found that they could not do anything financially. So again, this was Chick Webb's death wish, that he wanted this center, and it was done. So here we are. So the first fundraiser was held in February 1940 at the 5th Regiment Armory. And it's reported that over 7,500 people have showed at that. The tickets was $1.15. And the place was boiling and just filled up. And by the way, Joe Lewis was the MC, and because he was a very good friend of Chick Webb, who they respected very much. The other thing that happened was after that fundraiser, you know, we had World War II. World War II broke out, and Dr. Ralph Jonathan Young with his recreation committee that included many Black doctors of Baltimore. And again, this was a Black initiative. They then put the money in war bonds after that first fundraiser in order to help with the war effort. So after the war, Dr. Young reconvened the committee, and they then had a call to the Black community of Baltimore. You had the Baltimore Elite Giants, the Negro League champions, the baseball league champions, who did an exhibition ball game. You had the Afro-American newspaper did a fashion show. And then, of course, the small Black benevolent groups around the city and individuals contributed to the first leg of the Chick Webb Memorial Recreation Center that is located in East Baltimore. It's at 623 Eden Street in Baltimore. Actually, it's only about 2.5 blocks from where Chick Webb was raised. He was raised in the 1300 block of Ashland Avenue. So that's some of the demographics and the layout of East Baltimore. So that's pretty much the story. And during those early days, oh, let me tell you, because Chick Webb's death wish was this. He says, I want our youth to be deterred from juvenile delinquency to become good citizens.
Yeah.
I learned at the age of 69, I learned that I actually was one who accomplished that dream. At 9 years old, I learned to swim at Chick Webb. I learned to swim there. I became a lifeguard. It helped me pay my way through school and take care of my family. So, but it was not until I was 69 years old did I learn of Chick Webb death wish. And I'm sure that there are many, many more people here in Baltimore and probably around the country that actually came through that recreation center and is not aware of what Chick Webb's death wish was. But that was his death wish. And I feel very much, I just feel that this is something I need to do as being one of those persons that came through the Chick Webb Center.
Absolutely.
And I would say this to you, there's so many more. When you look at the legacy of Baltimore in its athletics, you had Muggsy Bogues, you had Sam Cassell, you had Reginald Witt. All of those guys, I am certain, came through that Chick Webb Center as youth.
You're certain about that. That's that whole East Baltimore situation down in Dunbar.
Absolutely. So it was actually right next door to the old Dunbar. And then I should also say that the center was built and opened in November 1947. So right now we're in the 75th year. But in 1949, the city of Baltimore did step up and they put a swimming pool in there. And that was to accommodate Dunbar High School, which is right across the street. So again, that then provided that recreational for the East Baltimore community. I learned later on that in 1953, the Chick Webb Center had a team called the Webmen, and they won the state championship in swimming. That was the YMCA and some other swim teams that the Chick Webb actually produced a championship team in 1953, and they were called the Webmen.
This is the
But
great.
it goes beyond that, because back in the day, when that was an outlet for me as in recreation, that particular center had different kinds of programs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, synchronized swimming. Do you believe that? They had synchronized swimming team, again, competitive swimming team. They had dance groups. We did all of our social things there at the Chick Webb Recreation Center. It's called the Chick Webb Memorial Recreation Center.
Mm-hmm.
But it just baffles me that here I was, 69 years old, before I found out the history of that center. And that was brought on me because the city is doing the city and the Housing Authority of Baltimore, doing a major redevelopment in the area. We may call it gentrification or whatever. But they was prepared to demolish the recreation center.
And see,
They were prepared. Do what now?
Go on, Mr. Mills. On that same note, I'm going to bring some things in to help you illustrate more what you're saying. And that demolishment is what you're totally against that.
Wow. Because I'll give you the story on when that leaked out for the redevelopment of the community. Again, what we have there is you have a very vulnerable community. I don't undermine the intelligence, but it's a very challenged neighborhood right there in East Baltimore. It's only about a block and a half from the Johns Hopkins complex. And there's major redevelopment. They have what they call the Perkins Somerset Old
drummer, but he's also a philanthropist, where he kept people employed during the Depression. And his deathbed wish was, because Baltimore was terribly segregated, we had no outlet for black kids to go a place. And his deathbed dream was he wanted to have this center built to deter youth from juvenile delinquency and for them to become good citizens.
Again, the alarm went out that with this redevelopment, the alarm went out that they was going to demolish the Chick Webb Center. And along with that, the old Dunbar High School, they were talking about converting that to a hotel or something like that. So that put us into motion. It really put us into motion. And when I say us into motion, we had a lady named Miss Myrtle Congdon, who called the first meeting that was in April of 2016 that talked about this issue. And that's when I volunteered to participate with what was later called the Dunbar Coalition.
Is she with
because of my background? What was that now?
Mr. Mills, is she with Parks and Recreation?
No, she isn't. She's a volunteer. She was a Dunbar grad.
Okay. I read her name somewhere in the paperwork that you gave me.
Okay, no, she was formidable in creating the Dunbar Coalition, which is an ad hoc based group that was going to be opposed to the demolition of the Chick Webb Center. And it's very important that when we first came together, we attempted to have the whole area in and around Chick Webb and Dunbar and the Huntington Williams built several other buildings in that footprint. And we attempted to first go for a historic district, but again, having to watch bureaucrats, they told the community that they didn't want it to be a district. We had no knowledge of the redevelopment that was taking place, the comprehensive redevelopment. So they then said, we expect for you to go after the individual property owners for historic designation. And with the Dunbar Coalition, we just centered on the Chick Webb Memorial Recreation Center as our first step. Rather than the district, we went after the different property owners. And Chick Webb is under the Department of Recreation and Parks, the city of Baltimore.
Okay, and I understand that's what you want to get changed.
Absolutely.
Do you see the picture I pulled up I shared my
Yes,
screen. Okay. And that's
that
just
is the yes, that is a picture of the Chick Webb Memorial Recreation Center as it stands today.
yes.
Yes. It's just so much wrapped up into this. So as we moved along, we went through a whole process of learning about historic designation, and that was with the Dunbar Coalition. And we were successful. We had to go to our city council because the city council person had to put in the legislation for the center.
Right.
And after he put in that legislation, as community activists, we participated in all of the hearings. It goes through several steps of becoming historic. And the two major steps was the planning department and what they call CHAP, the Commission for Historic and Architectural Preservation, where they then put together the justification
Okay.
for historic designation.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that was put in, the councilman who put that in, named is Robert Stokes.
Yes.
He was initially, during the early days, he was initially running for city council. And once he was elected, we then sent him a letter to have the center designated historic, and he put in the legislation to do that. And we, as the Dunbar Coalition, had to follow through on that. And what that entailed was having to go to the different hearings. And two of the major hearings was the planning department and also the Commission for History and Architectural Preservation, what they call CHAP.
Okay.
And I tell you, so
what came out of that?
Oh, what came out? They all both approved. But the thing was, I have to say that there was slippage on the part of the legislative part. We was coming up to the 70th anniversary in November. I remind you, the bill was put in April, and we were coming up in November for the 70th anniversary of the Chick Webb Center, and there was no movement on the bill after July, after the CHAP. So we came up to November, which was coming up to the 70th anniversary.
Okay.
Because it should not have taken it took 8 months. And that's because I believe the bill was not being shepherded by the legislative official.
Right.
And as we was coming up to the 70th anniversary, I then testified before the the Housing and Community Development Committee that was coming up to the 70th. And I strongly appealed to them to make that legislation go. And Councilman Bullock, I forget what district he's in, but anyway, expedited the legislation where we were successful in having the building designated in its 70th year.
Okay. At least something prevailed. But this gentleman named Stokes, he did nothing.
I would have to say he did very little. There was some missteps. As a matter of fact, one of the major missteps was when we had about 25 people that went to the hearing for the planning department. And there's a requirement of posting the notice to the community 10 days before. We get to that particular hearing, that was in July. We get to that particular hearing and it wasn't posted, and the planning department was not going to hear it. But myself and another person, we appealed to them, and they waived the signage notification and allowed us to move the bill ahead. But again, that was a misstep on the part of the councilman who was to post for notification to the community of the hearing. So that just wasn't too nice. But again, that was, do what now?
It wasn't. I read
No. So, but at the same time, the same councilman from this inception has indicated what he has done. And, you know, you're supposed to bring your constituency along that you're doing with them, but he consists that he did things. As a matter of fact, this was another issue. So like 3 years ago, part of the funding for the center is like $12 million from what we call the HUD 108, that's Community Development Block Grant. And that's a loan of future block grant money to the city of Baltimore. And the Department of Housing and Community Development has set aside that loan at $12 million. So again, the councilman talks about he got us $12 million. However, that was a loan and it did not get approved until, what month is this? This is May.
Right now,
it was not, that loan that loan was not approved until May 2023.
2023.
Although the councilman was talking about he had gotten the $12 million back 3 years ago. It was just approved. And on that approval, R.J. Wachick Web Council, we stayed on top of that particular loan application, and we also submitted letter of support for the city to be able to get that loan from HUD.
Right.
It just so much goes around in regard to this historic designation thing, and I'm not sure how far we want to go today, but with the Department of Rec and Parks have made missteps. They created what they call a working group. Okay. And R.J. Wachick Web Council is part of that working group. I tell you, we have to always be careful because these bureaucrats, they will come in with imposed ideas. I mean, imposed. But I tell you, we went to Morgan State University, and I mean, after the first, I think it was the first meeting, after they talked about, we're going to talk about the redevelopment of Chick Web Center. We went up to Morgan State. I got an architect student named Devin Funderburg. And what Devin did was provided us with a rendering. In that second meeting, we took R.J. Wachick Web Council, we took that rendering to the meeting.
Okay.
and you know, it was almost, to me, they almost dismissed it. They almost dismissed that rendering. But again, they asked for community input, and we actually reached out to get that particular assistance. And even though we presented that, one of the elements that was represented in it was to create an economic development component to the center for its redevelopment. Right away, the Department of Rec indicated they couldn't do it because the budget didn't allow. Not only that, the department was relying on only the $12 million from HUD for the redevelopment. We then challenged them to say, where is your money? Right. The city had no money on the table. And what we have here is what they call the, I forget the name of it, capital improvement, whereas agencies reach out for like 6-year budget as far as their facilities, as to what they're gonna do.
Okay.
We were aware of that process. And R.J. Wachick, we jumped right on that process, and we recommended to the Department of Rec to include funding for the Chick Web Rec Center beyond, it was beyond the $12 million that was allocated by HUD.
Okay.
Not only that, I found it very, very disappointing. Now, R.J. Wachick Web Council, we didn't form formally until May of 2019. And that's a whole nother story, because when I finished my work with the Dunbar Coalition, I had to take a reprieve because I was hurt so badly.
Sure.
And because I tried to share with the group that we needed to formalize rather than being an ad hoc group. And they didn't buy into that. So I took a reprieve after the celebration we did in 2017. And then I created, with some others, the RJY Chick Web Council as a nonprofit standalone organization.
Okay.
And our mission statement is to look at the sustainability of the Chick Web Center, as well as looking at the bordering neighborhoods on how we be able to assist in the bordering neighborhoods, as well as the Chick Web Center. That's our major, that's our major focus. But not to deny, not to deny the assistance that's needed in that vulnerable community as redevelopment is taking place.
Around him to make that happen. The first festival was in 1940 when they did the thing over at Rich Fifth Army. 7,500 people showed up. The tickets were down 15%. That's where all the national artists came. And then you had the Ballroom Elite Giants who did an exhibition ball game, and the Afro-American did a fashion show. And then, if you look at our chart, the advertising, you'll see all those black businesses that supported that concert. My ultimate goal is, I would love for that center to get out of the hands of the Department of Rec and turned over to be managed and operated by the African American community.
Back to the working group.
Yeah, the working group, they were involved with the improvement and expansion, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, even with the different, this is what we don't understand. It's very, very complex, because looking at the history of the Chick Web Center, I got a low battery. Looking at the history of the Chick Web Center, the working group had us to work on 3 projects at the same time. Our communities are in silos.
Right.
One community don't know about the other.
Yeah, they're not talking to each other.
Another portion of the project was in what they call Perkins.
Okay.
That's south, a mile south of Chick Web Rec Center. People there do not know about what's happening north. And then they had us talking about the Chick Web Center at the same time, as well as Madison Square, which is not within the Perkins Somerset Old Town project, as 4 blocks up the street from the Chick Web Center. And they were talking about redevelopment of the Madison Square Recreation Center as well. It was just too much for our community to absorb that. And they allowed us to have to discuss all 3 at the same time.
Do you think that was by design, just to confuse things?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, looking at our vulnerable community, folks who just holding on as far as their everyday life, and to have them involved in the complexity of looking at the redevelopment of 3 recreational areas.
Well, yeah, sure.
That was just tremendous for our community.
Sure.
And you would think that even the representative, the legislative representative, would say that was too much for my residents. That did not happen.
That did not happen. Right.
No.
It did not
so
happen.
Again, with my background and my service to the community, I'm able to knit it all together. Because one thing is, a couple of things, when you look at the Perkins project, that Perkins project was built in 1942 specifically for white folk.
Okay.
So it took a while even before we integrated down there. I have to say it like that. And Somerset, in the same year, across from Chick Web, was developed specifically for black folk. And Madison, where they had the dome, where we used to do competitive basketball tournaments, 4 blocks up from Chick Web, they wanted to redevelop it too. But a community is being sidewinded because they had no funding for Madison Square. This was all projected, but we had to go through a process. But coming back to the Chick Web Center, and knowing the capital improvement. See, because in 2016, the Department of Rec had $12 million on the table for Chick Webb, but it disappeared.
Oh,
See, if folks don't keep an eye on capital improvement funding, it get redistributed.
okay.
So I suspect that when the project for what they call the choice grant came in, and it was projected that it's going to create a new YMCA
Mhm.
to replace the Chick Webb Center,
Oh,
they redistributed that $12 million.
I was just ready to ask, was out of that 12 million, any of that money earmarked for the Chick Webb Center?
They redistributed that. The
Yeah.
new funding, the new $12 million came from what I spoke of before, the
Mhm.
108 HUD loan
Right.
that replaced that initial $12 million that the Department of Rec had projected for use of renovating Chick Webb. But it was taken off the books when the Choice Project came on board.
Mhm.
And that was probably in about 2016, I believe. Yeah, so that's when they came up with that whole Perkins Somerset Old Town redevelopment. This is very, very complex.
Yes, it is. I read through what you were telling me all of yesterday, all of it. And I saw Somerset, Madison, Perkins, I saw all of them. And I was thinking, wait a minute. We're talking about Chick Webb, and how do we have these other entities tied in? But as you're saying, that's what makes it complex.
And not only that,
Yeah.
but the other thing is,
Mhm.
even at Chick Webb, now Madison, 4 blocks up the street. Now I told you about the historic swimming, because one of the things that we propose,
Mhm.
there's a building next to Chick Webb, it's the Huntington Health Department building where the health department moved,
Okay.
and that site was available. We had proposed to expand Chick Webb out to include a maybe an extended Olympic pool or NCAA size pool. They restricted us within the footprint, never disclosed the disposition of the health department building.
Okay.
But then they're proposing to put the swimming at Madison, which is 4 blocks up the street. And up there is more residential redevelopment rather than any kind of commercial. But if you look at the Chick website, it's close to downtown. It's
Yes,
close
it
to
is.
some new hotels.
Mhm.
It's close to some other historic areas. I said, how come not here versus up the street?
Right.
I just get overwhelmed with the professionals.
Right. Yeah, that was
And then the vulnerable communities
yes.
that look for themselves. So even, and it's very difficult. I don't have my maps or whatever, but if you see where Madison Square is, so that, that's up the street. It doesn't make sense. And then the other thing is, again, with my background, I had to do the demographics for the area because they were talking about putting another playground in the area. And when we look at the demographics, I think 75% are 18 years and older.
Mhm.
They were talking about putting another gym within the Chick Webb facility. So again, we are looking at the addition not being a gymnasium, but more of a multi-purpose cultural purpose center where you can play basketball.
Right.
But don't be calling this another gym, because
Right.
adjoining that is the Dunbar High School, which has a gym. You have Living Classrooms, which is 3 blocks down the street, which has a gym, indoor gym.
Mhm.
And you have Madison, where they were talking about expanding a gym. I'm saying, why another gymnasium? Doesn't make sense.
No.
But anyway, they have since changed the language, whereas that particular space is going to be more than just a gym, but also more maybe educational, whatever center. And the piece, another thing is,
Mhm.
let's not continue to call this a rec center, but it should be looked at as intergenerational. The department came out with a survey during the pandemic, It was a 30-day survey. RJY, we took the 10 elements that they wanted in the center. We picked the top 5 and we circulated it nationally. When the results came in, it chose the 5 elements that the council recommended, that included a walking track, a multi-purpose center, a founder's room, a computer lab. Anyway, it's the top 5.
Right. You hit all the marks.
And the piece was,
right,
they got results from as far away as Nevada, Oklahoma, New York, Virginia. We circulated it nationally for results. And 90% of that survey they did actually came from the RJY Chick Web Council. They had 29 hand-delivered or paper results. We had gone up to the center and actually hand-delivered 29. So I'm saying, wow, when I seen the results, I said, they only got 29 paper. We gave them that 29.
Right.
And then when you look at the survey, in the zip code where Chick Web is located, 21202, 05, 06, hardly any of the survey came from that zip code. RJY Chick Web, we was actually sharing the history with people around the whole city, and we got results from other zip codes rather than within the immediate area.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of work you have to do in order to offset the pre-designed and the pre-whatever from the professionals.
This is Ronald Miles. I want to help you celebrate Black History Month. You know where I am. I'm right down here at the Chick Web Memorial Recreation Center. And again, with just sharing the history, we know that this particular center was built by renowned Black folks in 1947. It took 8 years of fundraising, whereas we had phenomenal people to raise the money for Chick Web on his deathbed, and we wanted to do something for our Black youth in Baltimore. So again, I'm sharing with you the history. It was an 8-year venture. So after the concert that was done at the 5th Regiment Armory, where 7,000 people showed up, and the entertainers included Joe Louis, Ella Fitzgerald, Jackie Montague, Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong, the Nicholas brothers did that concert. Also, to raise funds, the Afro-American newspaper did a fashion show, and the Baltimore Elite Giants, who was the champions of the Negro League, also did fundraising. Now, what occurred too was just before the war, the money was raised and the money was put in war bonds. After the war, Dr. Young continued to fundraise to build this phenomenal center.
That's right.
It's appalling. I mean, I could see why you had there somewhere and then you took a little reprieve. You needed to go somewhere on an island or a beach and just relax for a couple of months. I mean, just the stress of it alone. You know,
well, I think one of the assets that I have is that I'm more like service oriented. I'm not looking for anything. The other thing is, and I found very, very interesting, was when Dr. Young went to get this center done. At the concert, he made a very heavy statement. He said, we are going to show you, Chick Web, that we are unified. The days of begging are over.
Yes.
He said the days of begging are over.
Yeah.
So even with the RJY Chick Web Council, I have not applied for any kind of grants or anything from the city, because oftentimes people get complicit and they lose their sense of advocacy. So I rely mostly on donations of people recognizing the work that we are doing and getting it done.
Right.
keep the overhead. I work free, so I keep the overhead very, very low, and we just deal with very essential things. So, I mean, this is a long, long story that
I read all the way back to 2016, all the way up to where we are now. And like I said, Mr. Miles, we're going to do this again. You know, this is going to be the first part of this series you talking about that, and all we're going to do is pick right back up in the next one where you are and where you're going.
Yeah, I would have loved to have broken this down to how it all began. I believe I went over that, and the challenge we did in order to get the historic designation. And this third phase now is improvement and expansion. And even now, in celebration of the 75th year, the RJY Chick Web Council, we are celebrating. We've done 2 concerts. One was at the a paid one for Keystone. The other was community-based.
Yes.
And that was free to the community.
Wasn't that in Wyman Park?
No. I'm coming up to that one.
Okay.
The free one was at Dunbar High School, which is right down the street.
Yes.
And that was focused, and we had local talent there. Marvin McDowell, who trains folks in boxing, he was the MC.
Okay.
And then we had performers who did the Ella Fitzgerald stuff, and we had dancers. So we're documenting that, what we did back in November.
Okay.
And recently, we Miss Stephanie Crease just wrote the biography of Chick Webb. Here is a lady in New York, and she also wrote of Dizzy Gillespie as well. But I'm hooked up with Miss Crease. Her name is Stephanie Stein Crease, and Dr. Wells out of Arizona State University, who's been assisting me as well.
Good.
But their input on the professional, on the academics, they said, how did you pick Chick Webb to write about? She said, you can't let him die. Here locally, know about Chick Webb. Not only was he a band leader, but the philanthropy that he did in New York during the Depression to keep people in.
To keep people working. Yeah, that's true.
He had elevated himself all the way up to that stature to be, to be able to help people. He was about helping people. Then Dr. Young, I tell you, after the Chick Webb Center was built, Dr. Young went in his own pocket and actually put the first equipment in there. Ella Fitzgerald was coming back doing concerts over the few years after Chick Webb died. This is holy. This is holy, a Black accomplishment.
Yes.
I mean, and we don't know, but we're telling the story.
We're telling it, and we're going to continue to tell it. And I like when you were telling me early on in this, you had listed a whole list of A-listers that came in and joined. I mean, there was this whole list of who's who. Wow. And these people helped to see this come to fruition, which is really great. I mean, I can feel your passion coming right through the camera. No, really. And the way I'm going to edit this, I'm going to work that piece in that you were interviewed from that other. I'm going to work it in. Because you're going to be all tied into this showcase with the Blacks in Wax, the Cultural African Museum, and we're working on trying to get the guys over at the Art Social Club. So we'll just put you like, boom, right in the middle. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's both of us so much in silos that we need to join in to find out all of the African American accomplishments in this particular city.
A couple of friends who came over today to have learned about Chick Webb from all the way in Washington, D.C. And I would like to introduce you to them. I got it the wrong way. I got it the wrong way. I'd like to introduce you to them. There you go, Rob.
Yes, sir. Hello, my name is Mr. Robert Eugene Young. I'm a native of Washington, D.C., but have family and friends here, and we've had similar situations where we didn't get proper funding to renovate historical landmarks. And so I'm here to support every possible way I can to get the word out to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen to Chickawav, that you get all the funding so that the youth, first of all, the youth can be helped, and also our seniors. We cannot forget them. Family is the most important infrastructure in this world. We must fight to keep it. And our recreational centers is a part of that formula. Thank you.
And then I had a neighbor, I tell you, she was walking down the street and just graciously provided funds to the Chickawav Council. I informed her of the Chickawav Center, and she said, "Oh, here you are."
Hi, I'm Vanessa. Vanessa Blackman. I was here to help support.
So I'm not. She is kind of bashful. But let me bring your attention again. I'm gonna bring your attention to this here, because this is one of the things we have to correct. Because they call this the Chickawav Memorial Pool, but actually, with Mayor D'Alessandro, the pool was dedicated to Dr. Ralph Jonathan Young. So as we are progressing ahead, we're going to correct and make sure that we have accurate Black history. This is Black History Month, and this is our place where our Black entertainers, renowned entertainers, developed. This is where many young people, back in the day, there were more than 500, they serviced more than 500 people a day coming out of the center with all kinds of programs. So we're working with the Department of Recreation and Parks to improve and expand the recreation center that's been long overdue. So this is history. So get in touch with us. Visit our webpage at RJY Chickawav Council. We're on Facebook, and we also have a webpage. So it's a struggle, but Black history is Black history. Until we tell the story, we won't know.
Oh,
I'm down on my battery.
what we'll do is, yeah, because that's probably going to happen again. And this is one that's happened a couple times. So in closing here, and like I said, I give you my word, we're going to do this again.
That'll be great.
You just lead off of what you want to say lastly.
Well, I just have so much on my head. I mean, it's just so much. I'm actually writing. I actually started writing my journey for historic designation.
Okay.
I put that on paper, and I'm gonna put it in some kind of book form sometime. But this has to be written, and it has to be written.
Oh yeah, you have to tell.
Story got to be told.
Yeah, the story got to be told. You know, like you said, literarily and visually, but you want to put it in a book form.
Absolutely, I have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to, and it's not gonna be no shortcuts. I'm going to point out the truth. The truth of our Black legislators. Let me tell you, Chickawav is situated right in a Black community that has had Black legislators for years.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah.
And if you had seen that place, how it went to disrepair, no investment, and I have to challenge the city. I couldn't go to Clifton Park, Drew Hill Park, Patterson Park, Carroll Park. So even getting funding, I had to say, oh, this is what you invested there, this is what you invested there, this is what you invested there. What about here?
What about here?
And it's still nominal.
Yeah. Like you said, the city is in silos. There's no communication. It's just a blatant disregard for the history. And if you don't speak up for it, they'll rewrite it for you. You know,
somebody will.
Someone will rewrite it for you. This is what this is about on the Finance Hour. Like David and I said, tell your own story and your own narrative. You've heard it from Ronald Miles from RJ, Chickawav Camp.
RJY, Ralph Jonathan Young. So although they tell me about being Chickawav, Mr. Chickawav, no, I'm Dr. Young. It was he who carried out that dream. It was he. And then to know his story, being the first Black commissioner in the health department, being in the health department, which is right behind Chickawav, where they did penicillin trials and prenatal care free, because they were based right there in the Black community. So they had a laboratory, you know, but he provided quite a bit of stuff for this Kick Web Center and for the community. And they even had a rec center named after them that disappeared. They had a school named after them that disappeared. They didn't wipe Dr. Young's name off the books here in Baltimore.
I know, but his name is tied to this council, though. You made sure of that.
Absolutely.
You made
and
sure
then you have the article where Dr. Young is sitting between Delisandro and McKeldin when the city put the money up for the swimming pool. And it was dedicated. Do you know? No, you don't know.
No, I don't know.
2 weeks after that, the Recreation Committee rescinded RJY or Ralph Young Swimming Pool, rescinded the name. So that is another piece we're gonna have to work on during this working process, that they're gonna rename that pool Ralph Young. The center, Kick Web, but the pool gotta be Ralph Young.
Ralph Young.
You know, they stripped it from him.
See, people,
Although
you've
they were
heard
gonna
it.
dedicate.
This is the history, people. Like Ronald Miles is saying, this is our history. And he's making sure that the history gets out there so you'll know about it. Because if you don't know about it, it can be eradicated just like that, and you'll never know it existed. Mr. Miles, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And as I said, I give you my word, we will do this again.
Okay.
And you get that battery in there, get another one in there, okay? I'm gonna let you go now, okay?
All right, I appreciate it.
Pleasure
As
having
soon as
you
we
on the
can,
finance
I'll
hour.
try to structure a little better so we can really tell this story. It is amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, we will. It's a lot to tell.
It is too much to tell.
Yeah. Well, we got time. As long as we're breathing, we have time.
I'm gonna get it done.
Yeah.
Well, I say collectively,
Yeah.
we'll get it done. No, nothing is done by an individual by themselves.
Oh no, no, it's always a collective effort.
I'm
I
going
wish
to
you
spread
the
it out.
best. I wish you the best with that book.
I got to get it done.
Oh yeah, you're going to. With God's help, you will. I'll talk to you again soon, sir.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you,
I'll
sir.
see how you edit and do everything. Go on my website. There's a whole bunch of on different ones. There are different videos when I'm walking the neighborhood, defining it, describing it. It's
Okay.
on there.
Okay. I actually did pull some stuff down. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you too.
Okay, I appreciate you. Okay.
Bye.
Stay tuned. Next week we'll have Who's Who, International Black Unity News featuring Dr. Mackenzie, Sharia Young,